earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and hurricanes, and we owe them. We owe them to make sure that also their conditions and their life will be preserved, and it's really about saving lives. You know, we have seen the tragic consequences of floods where people have to be displaced, you know, from their villages, from their life. We have seen the tragic impact of hurricanes and tsunamis where people are dying.
The Chad basin has moved from 25,000 square kilometers of water to about 2,000 today.
Yeah. And there is more than that. So how long can we afford to do that? I don't think very long. And we have a duty vis-a-vis the next generation to really make the right decision today for us to preserve their future tomorrow.
One of the key points of the past development agenda was a global partnership for development, and developing countries usually accused the industrialized countries or the North of not doing enough in terms of technology transfer, of not doing enough in terms of debt cancellation, of not reshaping the global leadership structure, which of course has led to frustration. Is the new agenda taking all of that into consideration to have a sort of a well-balanced global leadership environment?
It does, definitely. It does in terms of commitment, at least, and all the countries, they committed to that.
And only if wishes were roses.
Well, actually, no. You know me. I am a very realistic person and very down to earth when it comes to translating commitment and statement into reality. I think we need this fair partnership. But when you address a fair partnership, it means that responsibility is shared and is collective. So we need good governance on the one hand, on both hands actually, and we need also to be fair to the countries. We had some successes though. I think we see emerging countries and who really have a say, but there are still some unfair, mechanisms which actually. Because of the dependence on the aid, sometimes because of maybe unbalanced trade exchange between different countries, we are not yet there. I'm a strong believer that the solution and the measure starts at home. Before asking the others, it's important that we also internally and nationally progress is done in terms of addressing the priorities and in terms of making sure that the enabling environment actually for the industry or for the economic development or for the investment is really there. So therefore the weight of those countries is going to change.
Well, you just said that there were a series of missing lines in the last development package. Countries and the United Nations did not see the rise of Boko Haram, did not see the rise of Islamic State, did not see the coming of the Asian tsunami, which killed so many people, did not see the rise of conflicts in Syria, the Arab Spring, all of that was not included, which means that...
And Ukraine and
the migration and many others, so many of those issues were not foreseen, which means that agenda number 9 was lacking, the unpredictable point. Now you have 17. Probably the 18th point on the agenda should be the unseeable world, and resources should be allocated for that.
Well, prediction is not a human capacity. I mean, analysis is a human capacity.
The unseen. And the unseeable should be the 18th point.
I mean, we call that any other business. I think there are things we can predict, and when you think about it, many of those unforeseen events, tragic events in most of the cases, had some root causes. And when you think about the MDGs, some of the MDGs were meant actually to address some of those root causes. Poverty is a great ally to, unfortunately, to violence and to even feeding into some of the fanatism and the terrorism. So we need to keep that in mind and not kid ourselves. I mean, the root causes in not achieving MDGs, it means that we did not address completely the root causes. And breaking down the priorities and objectives into the 17th and making sure actually that peace, security, and human security, human rights, and gender are cross-cutting issues and seen as really a pillar and a must for any sustainable development gain is a huge progress, but it means also a lot in terms of, how can we be serious about making sure that in 2030 we would be really able to say internationally, yes, we reached that.
Okay. One of the slaps on the Millennium Development Goals was the global economic environment. Again, the world did not foresee, or those policymakers did not see the 2008 global economic crunch, which started in the United States of America, which had a lot of impact on mobilizing resources for achieving these goals. Are those concerns now well determined in the new agenda, so that in 2030 we shouldn't be apologizing like some of us are doing today?
Well, the financial crisis, the economic crisis was basically a financial crisis, and the root causes was the lack of a strong regulation of the financial system. How far have we been in improving that? I know that some progress has been made. I'm not sure we are really reaching out to the standards when it comes to a good governance of the financial system. Transparency is definitely better, and I think that all countries now are really serious about having a kind of regulation. Most probably we won't get again such crisis. But it was also a wake-up call. In many cases we were talking about globalization, but from a very, very, very narrow, actually, point of view, and through the lens of economic, exchange. Today, not only because of the financial crisis, but also because of the globalization of the terrorism, we know that our world is interlinked, and that unfortunately, if there is a problem somewhere, that will impact elsewhere. And the best example of that are definitely Islamic states and Daesh, but also the migration we see in Europe today. So again, it is very important to take very seriously those 17 goals. The 17 goals are not only, a song or, just a political statement. It takes good governance. It takes monitoring. It takes accountability, because we need to take stock every single time, where do we stand and how we can readjust. But it takes also, seriously translating that into funding, whether this funding is a public budget or is aid flow. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's each country will have to deal with it. But one thing that was very important also, because of what happened, was also to put emphasis on domestic, actually, funding, and not depending all the time on donors or on aid.
Okay. One of the words you have used in this program is good governance, transparency, accountability. I know that one of the areas of contention between the developed and the emerging countries is that most developing countries have snail work administrations. When I say the procedures are too heavy, the administration, the processing of files doesn't go faster. Because of bureaucracy, it's very difficult to scale development and move things forward very fast. How are you going to network from a global perspective to move from up to down and from down to up, with very limited time wasting and administrative bureaucracy, which of course has been like a sea of words to development?
Well, I think that the first step is first and foremost to localize, the SDGs, because now in their formulation, those are global ones. But again, we have to translate them into the reality of the country. So that has to be done in a participatory approach. I mean, so we are compliant.
Let's take the case of Cameroon, for example. Yes. You just said about water, where you have so many actors involved in the water process. They will tell you of CamWater, they will tell you of the Ministry of Energy and Water, they will tell you of another structure one has to distribute, like Cameroon, the zoo, the other one is I don't know what happens in that entire process.
We started already working on that before actually the SDGs, because the humanitarian situation in the far north and in the east call actually on improvement of access to water, and therefore we had to address that. But let's be realistic. We will go as far as the willingness of the government and the political will is there. We are not here to change the bureaucracy. We provide the government with the tools, with the instruments. We build the capacities. We can support the reforms, but we are not the doers when it comes to that. It takes really a very strong and firm policy and strategy in terms of reforming the bureaucracy and in terms addressing seriously the governance issues.
Of the past, most of us saw the Millennium Development Goals from the eyes of the United Nations Development Program, which of course coordinates UN development operations across the world alongside other agencies, UNESCO, with overlapping missions. What will be the role of the UNDP, which you are representing in Cameroon in this new set of commitments for the global community?
Well, the first role again is the localization of the SDGs. In Cameroon we are delivering as one kind of United Nations, and I have to tell you that as a resident coordinator, I'm not here to put the flag of one agency instead of another. I am the UNDP resident representative, but I think that our value added will be strengthened based on the synergies and the sum of our value added instead of coming agency by agency. Of course, each agency has its mandate and its expertise, and as UNDP, the equitable development and inclusive growth is definitely part of our priorities. Early recovery programs when it comes, to the East and Septentrion are also a priority, and goes without saying resilience and of course supporting reforms based on the request of the government again. I mean, we are not here to impose anything. Each government is sovereign, and it's up to them to decide what is their priorities, and we are here to accompany and to support the implementation of the programs to actually address those priorities for the well-being of the Cameroonian people.
Let's imagine that you or I are living in a world of 2030, and the question the journalists will put to some of us at that time, when probably I will no longer be a journalist by then, will be that, okay, in 2015 we were supposed to achieve Millennium Development Goals, so we're just 8. In 2030 we are expected to achieve Sustainable Development Goals, which are 17. Is it possible to achieve 17 development goals in 15 years when we were unable to achieve 8 development goals in 15 years within the same time framework?
I don't think that the difference is in terms of number. Actually, the 17, if you go back to the 8 MDGs, a lot of the 17s are already in the MDGs, okay? It was more of a breakdown, actually, because there was no breakdown before. Some goals were not addressed. Some
they were too heavy, they were packed.
Yeah, they were packed and not enough articulated in terms of indicators, in terms of monitoring, and in terms also of strategies. So this breakdown doesn't mean that there are more problems. It just means that we approach them in a different way. Again, it is the responsibility of the government to make sure they achieve that in 2030. We are hopeful in UN that will happen. Myself, I won't be in UN. I would have retired by 2030, but I would love to see a world with achieved SDGs, because that will guarantee a better world for my grandchildren.
The coordinator of the United Nations systems to Cameroon, Najat Rochdi, thanks very much for accepting our invitation on Globewatch.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks.
You're welcome.